Yo, yo, yo. Welcome to wNS9 Plus. I'm your host, Anthony DiNardo. With me, we have, of course, Jim. We have Tyler. We got ourselves a special guest tonight from The Athletic, Stephen J. Nesbitt. What's up?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for coming on. It's been a pretty busy day for you, I suppose.
A little bit busy. Yeah. Jim was in my DMs being like, can you join the show tonight? I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's stay up late, get the kids to bedtime. So we're here. Let's talk about it.
We appreciate you coming on. Kind of dropped a bombshell on Pirates Twitter today and across the fan base. So yeah, I wanted to have you on. Very timely, good timing. So we can kind of dissect this article that you put out today, along with Ken Rosenthal at The Athletic. Comfortable being mediocre, why the Pirates keep losing. So quite a title there to get people real.
Yeah. I had no say in the title nor the header photo, which used the photo of Nutting. That's pretty much like the meme in Pirates Twitter. Like I didn't have a say in that one, but whatever. So I mean, you use the word bombshell, and to be honest, I didn't know what to expect from this because if you're a Pirates fan who's watched the team over the last decade, I don't think there was a whole lot in this story that you didn't think was the truth. What I felt we were able to do was provide some depth of detail that hadn't previously been reported. So I was covering the team in 2015 when they unveiled the new Performance Center, which is a super impressive big building at Pirate City. I was there when they unveiled the the expanded, like doubled in size clubhouse at McKechnie Field at the time. Looked super nice, new offices, new everything, new media room, thankfully. All that was great, and it was like highly touted by the Pirates. They really enjoyed showing it around everybody. At one point, it was in Bob Nutting's official bio that they built those buildings and done all that work. It was an impressive thing. But when we were doing the reporting process in here, and we discovered from three sources that money, well, the story, if you haven't read it's the lead, you can get that part for free. It was that Neil Huntington had gotten the plans for this. They had taken this to the Pirates ownership and said, hey, we'd love for to get additional funds to cover this. And they were told from Nutting that they had the money they needed in a baseball operations budget. They just needed to decide how to spend it. And so they had opportunities. They could have chosen to not pull it out of payroll, but that would mean it's coming out of scouting or tech or one of these areas that like taking $8 million out of would have absolutely decimated that area. And when you were the Pirates, and at that point in time, you could believe that maybe you could get by with drawing $8 million out of payroll to pay for something else. So I think that makes some sense. And but to me, I was like, I know that's new information that hasn't been reported. I didn't have that information back then when I was covering the team. Would have loved to. It would have helped explain some of the things we were seeing moving forward, where the Pirates go down from a record high $99 million payroll starting 2016 to getting rid of Liriano, getting rid of, I guess, prior to that record payroll, they're getting rid of Charlie Morton. They were flipping Neil Walker. Just a bunch of departures that offseason that set them up for 2016 that started this descent in a lot of ways, payroll and production. And so to me, that was an anecdote that said a lot and sort of set the stage for what the story was going to be.
Yeah, and I'll jump in here just because I mean, yeah, that's the lead in of the story, right? And I think there were a lot of people on Pirates Twitter who kind of agreed with you, kind of what you originally said there. The overall premise of this article isn't anything new, right? This is the general idea here are things that Pirates fans have known for a long time. So I guess my question to you is, some of them are like, why even write this article? Why now? Why do this? So I mean, that's my question to you. What's the point? Why write this article right now?
Sure. I've seen a lot of that feedback today. I would say like 95% of people are saying like, thank you for saying this in a national area. And the other 5% are like, I already knew this, which I don't disagree with. I think a lot of this is, again, if you're watching day in and day out, you're following Mackey and Gorman and Stumpf and all these beat writers, like, the ins and outs even better than we laid it out. We did not get into a bunch of player names here. We did not get into a ton of detail. It's more of an overarching view. And the Athletic has done this in the past with other organizations, the Rockies, the Padres, sort of the what's gone wrong here, so that the reader who's flipping through the Athletic will look at having no experience with the Pirates or no background. Maybe they, remember that there were some playoff seasons relatively recently, but haven't really tracked where things have gone since there. And that person can read it and be like, oh, that does seem like a pretty bad spot. And so my aim in that from the start was, so Ken reached out to me a few weeks back and just said, like, I think it might be time to just write something about the Pirates, sort of get a feel for like what's the state of the franchise in 2024. They are entering year 5 with Cherington. Like, how do we get here? What's going on? And so that's when we started our conversations. And for me, the premise was this quote we used in here that you probably all remember. It was Travis Williams saying they needed to crack the code, which was when they hired Cherington, said we needed someone to crack the code to win in Pittsburgh, paraphrasing, like in this era of baseball. Which, if you're reading between the lines, it's saying we in Pittsburgh, in like this, the way baseball works today, how it's unfair to smaller markets, you need to be smarter if you're going to win, right? And they bring in a guy in Cherington who I think had a ton of ideas about how to do it, how to bring them up to speed in analytics, bring them up to speed in the coaching, and all things we get into. Now we have some critiques about that from people. But if you're trying to crack the code, the basis for that, though, is you need to crack the code because we're not going to spend like upper echelon clubs, right? They've accepted that. However, we do need to address in that same story, if we're going to say that you're working with a bottom 5 budget, that's the backbone of the problems, as most people see it. They don't have margin for error when you operate like that. You still need to address the fact that other organizations have made it work under similar constraints, right? We've seen the Guardians make it work. We've seen Tampa, of course, is like the gold standard. That's probably like ruining baseball for everybody else because everyone wants to do it. We just saw the Twins owners, the new owner, saying that, well, we got to try to be a little bit like the Orioles and the Rays. Like, yeah, everyone wants to do that. You know what the Orioles did? They put their fan base through a horrible stretch, a terrible stretch after some good years. And the Rays have managed to not do that. They've just won since 2009 or whatever it was. And so we wanted to at least investigate, okay, if we've accepted that these are the constraints under which the Pirates choose to operate, let's investigate, like, what are the issues that have prevented that from happening under Huntington first and then Cherington now. So that's sort of what we set out to do.
So I guess my question here would be, I know we talked about the $8 million that had to be spent to build a new facility. Is that at all a common practice? Because I know we like jokingly make fun of the Cubs and their Wrigleyville and how they were broke, just making fun of them. But is that something that happens across baseball a little bit, where things like that come out of baseball operations, or are these owners putting their own money towards things like that?
In checking around, we were given no indication that this is common practice. This is a real estate investment, right? This is something where if they sold it, they could say, we have a fully refurbished, state-of-the-art performance center at Pirate City. Whoever's buying the team, you're going to pay us for that. So in my mind, that's like a capital investment that they're making. And so I don't know why it would come out of baseball operations. People I've talked to, no one has like things that have been flagged in the story that people might disagree with. No one so far has disagreed with us pointing that out as a strange factor. And the sources we talked to said, yeah, it impacted the way that front office had to operate.
Interesting. And I just want to add in something here too, because like going back to Jim's point, what I think a lot of people are missing is, I mean, nationally, people probably don't realize all this stuff, right? Locally, when you're, dealing with the Pirates, a lot of people understand the opportunities that the Pirates present, right? And how they could probably spend more, and you call them whatever you want, right? But what I do want to say is, like, I know you said it was like kind of broad, but you do mention and highlight some very particular things that, again, like this weight room thing we're talking about. Like, yeah, a lot of people can say the Pirates are cheap, right? But like no one knew this. There's a lot of stuff in here that I think, even if you had the idea that the Pirates don't spend money and there's opportunity there, that like there's a lot of things that are pretty eye-opening, and not just that either, but just the way they operate. And again, you're getting like actual former players, current, people, the Pirates or whatnot, like their perspective on this. I think that's that is like that's pretty eye opening to get that information here.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to give a little bit of everything. I wanted the Pirates fan who's been following day in, day out to get something out of this.
Right.
A lot of Pirates fans just want to feel heard, to be honest. Like, I know when I was in Pittsburgh, like people didn't take national looks at Pittsburgh, and that was kind of fine because then I don't have to like compete with those perspectives. But because I am in a national role now, and I also have the background of having covered the team on a daily basis for 3 years and been around the team for 3 more, I just think it's easier for me to be able to look back and say, I remember when. I mean, I remember in 2017 when Bob Nutting said that while all these other teams go through cycles, rebuilding cycles of winning and losing, we haven't done that. And so it's important for us to develop because we don't want to do that. And I had pulled this at some point. I'll read it to you. What we need to do is get into the playoffs when everyone hits the reset button and goes forward. That's part of why it's so important that we're able to have sustained success and not embrace the wild rebuilding cycles that some teams have. We may be proven wrong at some point. That was the team's mindset. There was a lot of pride. And this is like something that deserves to be said. And it was in one draft of the story and didn't make it because we had to cut because it was way too long. A Nesbitt special combined with the Rosenthal special there are some executives that we talked to and others we didn't talk to. I've heard this from in the past that take a lot of pride in trying to win the Pirates way. They like welcome the challenge of doing it this way. The people aren't out here trying to just like take shots left and right at Bob Nutting. They like, we know what we signed up for when we went to Pittsburgh, and it's to try to win with a smaller payroll, all through development, acquiring guys through trades in a smart manner, amateur acquisition, all those things. So it's not like every employee who's with the Pirates is complaining about Bob Nutting spending. So I'm looking at this here in essence and saying it might be up to us or people like us to point out they're choosing to operate this way, and it does handcuff them. They may not be out here complaining, and we have a quote from Charrington saying we have all the resources we need. Well, you also have the second lowest payroll in baseball. And so like, would things be different if it were the 17th or the 20th or the 21st? What would change? So I remember a quote like that, right, from 2017, where he's saying, we don't do the rebuilding thing. And he's proud of it. They've tried to be a playoff team every year, an 84, 85 win team, right on the cusp. You hit the playoffs and it resets. And then in 2019, 2 years later, he fires Huntington, hires Charrington, and he had a quote at the same time saying, we can't shoot to be an 84 win team. And so we don't want to be a 65 or 69. I don't remember exactly what it was. So he's changing course. He's changing his mind at that point. He was proven wrong, as he said in the previous quote. So because I have that background, I remember things like that. So Ken might not remember because it's buried in like 3,000 pages of internet. But it helps to have that background to be able to pull and surface some of the stuff. Even if we didn't use it, it just helps for perspective on where they've come from.
I think an interesting part of the article was like you mentioned, you were wanting to kind of take what happened under the Huntington years, what's now happening under the Charrington years, and almost just compare the two. I think one thing that is a big issue, and you mentioned, would it be different if the payroll was more, right? If it was the 17th highest payroll, would it be more? When you decide to have a payroll like you have of the Pirates, and it's $80 million, it's the 29th largest payroll in the league. You mentioned, the margin for error just being a lot smaller, right? And you actually highlighted one of my tweets in here about the international signings. You highlighted the draft, which, since 2012, only 4 players the Pirates have drafted in the top 5 rounds. 4 since 2012. Have produced at least one WAR. And it's just, you look at numbers like that and you almost are like, kind of like, how are we even in a position now this year where there are fans like we're somewhat optimistic about this season. And it's kind of crazy that they've failed so much in a lot of different ways that like they needed to succeed. Yet we're still here, and we're not talking about the Rockies in 2024. We're not talking about the A's in 2024. Like, we're talking about a team that has the potential of competing for a wild card. But I mean,
it could be worse. It could absolutely be worse.
It could. So be worse.
I was making a whole list of all the trades that happened before and after, and we didn't end up getting into this a whole lot. because like what takes all the attention is the trade of Cole leaving and Chris Archer coming. But there are so many other ones, and there's some impact today's team a lot, right? Oh no, I just threw a thumbs up there accidentally. Where if you I had this list, maybe I can pull it up here. There are some, like, you could forgive the Pirates if they were too spooked to trade after what happened with Chris Archer. And they weren't. I mean, to be fair, like they decided when they brought Charrington they were going to rebuild even if they didn't tell anybody. And so for all their arguments that I got this quote a lot from Bob and we didn't use it, but they're totally clear and transparent about their process. No, you weren't. You didn't tell fans that you were going to be terrible for 5 years. You didn't tell fans that you were going to trade every player whose jersey your kids had. You didn't say any of that. You just said, like, we're going to find a way to build. We need to get better every day. That's all you said.
Yeah,
that's fine. That's like that's messaging, but don't tell me you were transparent. But when you look at that afterward, so they traded everybody of value, right? Marte, Bell, Musgrove, Tyone, Frazier, Holmes, and then Anderson, Rodriguez, Stallings, on and on, whatever. But they end up, getting valuable pieces that you'd like to have some of those guys still, but they'd be gone by now. So if you're going to be bad, you're going to rebuild, and sure, they weren't going to help you in the end. So Peguero, Bednar, Rodriguez, Sawinski, Holderman, Oviedo, like there are some wins there. You'd love to be able to develop those guys internally so you don't have to go get them. But as your tweet mentioned, and I included in the story, like zero from the international market. The way I think I wrote it in the story was like an impact everyday player. Last one was Starling Marte. I at one point had like a parentheses that said Gregory Polanco was intermittently impactful. And then I guess Harold Ramirez has been pretty good for the Rays, but certainly nothing for the Pirates. And then the draft numbers, I have a whole spreadsheet here. So it's crazy how little they've gotten out of the draft. I don't know how you're here today with that little from the draft. It's Kid Bryan, and that's it. I mean, Meadows was a 6'4" guy, but it was somewhere else, and also his career has gone a different way because of off-field anxiety issues and things he's dealt with. But beyond that, man, it's to tangent real quick. Like the way they need to win is winning trades, which I'm saying that they've actually done a decent job of it. Not poorly enough to be like criticized, I think. Even if there's some trades that you didn't get enough for. But they need to extend guys. You have to. And so they were able to do that with two guys. And you want to give them credit for a club record, 2 club record extensions, small as they might be compared to the rest of the league. But at the same time, it took one guy demanding a trade and the other guy secretly going behind the back, which we'll get to, of your major league staff to work with a double-A coach. Not a great look, like those two things. And they need to be able to do with other guys. I don't know that you're going to be able to extend Mitch Keller because he developed too late. He's too close to free agency. Like, you have to have these guys hit soon enough that you can go to them after their first or second year and say, hey, Kutch, hey, young guy, we want to give you a ton of money now so you'll stay for 8 years. And they just haven't done that. So that when you're failing in free agency, you're failing in drafting, that's what you're hurting yourself with, as you can't find those young guys to extend. And the numbers here are just crazy. When like Kevin Newman is like your third most valuable guy that you've drafted in that time. Like Kevin Newman he was a 3-WAR over his whole time with the Pirates guy. First rounder.
Third best draft pick in the last 11 years.
And it's tough. And part of what you were saying too is like, I think a fair criticism of the article, if you want to, is that I focus too much on an organizational problem, which I'm considering that's Huntington and Charrington. If people want to read this and say you're blaming Charrington, it's like, okay, there are certain things that we pointed out about things that have gone poorly according to people we talked to in the coaching ranks and development. Drafting stuff, this is a long-term problem. Talking about cracking the code, like they cracked the code in 2011 when they spent $1,005 to get every good player in the draft. That was great. That's cracking the code. You found the rules and you figured out how to get around it. Since 2012, and like that was taken away from them, you've done incredibly poorly. And there's like really nothing more that needs to be said about that. I'm trying to read.
I guess like.
And they just moved the guy who had been drafting for them, Joe DeLucari.
Yeah. Well, I guess that was going to be my next question. There was, I know you just talked about the it being an organizational problem between Huntington and Sherrington. And you mentioned in the article about the guy from the Netherlands or wherever he was from that
Yeah, Bart.
stayed on staff with Ben Sherrington. Did you get a sense that there might be a problem where the team was continuing to employ guys that, let's be honest, the development failed for a very long period of time, and they stayed on staff under Sherrington as well, and nothing really in that department changed?
The sense I got was that Sherrington's regime was really interested in promoting newer voices, which is happening across the game. I talked to players in other organizations now. They're like, yeah, it happened here too. And they don't really see a problem with that. So that wasn't really the specific gripe. It was more that experienced people were getting pushed out. And there was a quote I had from a pitcher that we didn't include in here. Is too long, but the gist of it was what's lost when guys like I don't remember who he named. I think Scott Ellerton is still there, but it was another former big leaguer who left. What you lose when guys like that is leave the organization is I don't have that guy who I can go talk to when it's August and I've had my B stuff for 3 straight outings and I need to figure out how to gut through it. And I've lost velocity, I've lost everything. I just need to figure out how to gut through it and get some outs on the major league level, or else I'm going to get sent down. I need someone to talk to other than a pitching coach who's going to come over to me and say, listen, we just got to get 2 more inches of run on your slider. That's what we're really shooting for. He's like, that's a conversation I cannot hear at that point in time. I need to hear it from someone, not someone who's done it necessarily, but someone who can coach me through how to actually perform to keep my job in that moment. And so when you are elevating the voices of new people, you're going to have a problem potentially on the players' side where you're not getting enough variety of the voices they're hearing, or the messaging is poor. Right, the message could be good, the messaging could be poor, the messenger could be delivering it incorrectly, and then you also have the complaint from the coaching side of these former big leaguers, these pro guys, is saying like, I'm being now like led by someone who didn't do this, who's never been to a full spring training, and don't know how to lead. Almost more than like the complaint was more like the leading more than the instructing at times. It wasn't like they're changing everything, they're thinking analytics or whatever. A lot of times there's like they were put in high profile positions and leading a team or leading a group of coaches, and they just had no experience doing it. And it felt like they didn't have enough support from the organization. Like the organization put them in these higher roles and didn't give them the support they needed to be able to be effective leaders of coaches.
That problem you're pointing out kind of more once the Sherrington regime took over.
Yes. And I think in a lot of ways, the Huntington regime was old school, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they wanted to change a whole lot, to their detriment, right? We can all look at the end times there, and it was not pretty, right? I pointed out that, the farm system was not good. They were failing to transition guys to the majors, like easy examples to pick out. And they've done nothing internationally. So like a lot of these problems, again, I'm saying are organizational problems where if you want to criticize how I wrote that is probably like that I didn't like pick blame on somebody. I just said, this is an organizational problem. You have not drafted well since 12. You have not signed an international free agent that's been an impact player since 07. So that's fair. Sherrington, to his credit, like it is still too early to figure some of this stuff out and to assign blame. Their draft picks may work out great. Yes, he has the benefit of drafting high every single year. That's what happens when you rebuild. Maybe Huntington would draft a little bit better if he was drafting 1-1, but Henry Davis could still be a dude, right? He could still, if he can catch every day, I think his bat's going to pick up at least. So if he has to be a right fielder, I'm more concerned. But if he can catch passively, okay, cool. I'm not like throwing that guy out right now. He's not even 25 yet. Paul Skeens could be an absolute stud. So that changes the whole complexion of your rotation if you have that guy, and if you're able to keep Keller or develop one of these other guys. Oviedo comes back healthy next year. So things could work out okay. But there are still like fissures and cracks in the program. And to win under these financial constraints, everything just needs to go so smoothly and so well. And so there are problems we felt were worth pointing out.
Steven,
Right.
I'm sorry, but they had like a guy that was just like a yogi teaching them how to hit. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean
They
it
had
was
some hippie telling them how to hit. What
it
are
was-
we doing?
It was certainly interesting. I listened to a podcast with Bart Hanegraaff, who they're talking about. And I don't know. I felt like the perspective that I got from a lot of people was like, "There's a place for that guy." We had a quote to that effect.
Sure.
There's a place
Right.
for that guy. It's just like, should he be like directing the hitting program?
No.
Where I would argue that the feedback based on the statistics of the organization are that something's wrong, whether that's your major league hitting coach or your director of methodology or whatever. Ideas are great, right? I mean, you send it was Cole Tucker, Kevin Kramer, Jared Oliva. You send them to do some working out, and we didn't write this part, but like there was something they did right during spring training. A guy would go 0 for 3 or something, and they would Tyler, stop interrupting with your head nods. It was something. It was something where they would unplug a guy for a day and send him to hitting school, which I don't think is crazy weird. I think it just needs to be messaged well. Tell the players what you're doing. Tell the media what you're doing. Why should it be weird? I remember covering it at that time, and I remember, okay, Cole Tucker's still in Bradenton. Got it. Okay. Okay. And he comes back, and you're like, so what happened? And it's kind of like, oh, just working out, just kind of taking swings. And then you hear about it now, and it's like, okay, it was like twists and turns and aqua bag workouts, and this stuff could work. I think it just needs to be one tool in the toolkit, and it just seems like to this day they're not quite putting it all together in their hitting program.
Well, I do want to bring
Speaking
something
of-
like this sense up.
Go ahead.
But
Yeah, go
I mean,
ahead,
before I do, I just want to ask something, because I just want to point this out. You did use one tweet and one tweet only in your article, and it had to be Jim. Now, Steven, why? Why? We already have a problem. I don't know if you're aware. We already have a problem. I mean, Jim's already has a big head.
Jim
And
actually
now
knows
you
the
make
answer to this.
him the only person in this article as far as a tweet. I'm disappointed. But
Hey, Ethan. Ethan, I'll read that in a second and answer it. But that's great. So Jim knows the reason. It was that I can't, like, those are no longer available. All the lists of their amateur signings used to be on Pirates Prospects, and it's not up right now. So I wasn't able to go track that down myself. So that was the reason I had to use, because he picked it before it just picked.
Yeah, when this article
thank
came
you.
out, and I saw my tweet in there, I was like, oh, that's why he was asking me about that question.
Okay, Ethan's asking, I have to go, but someone asked why, I think it says, why can no one agree on Nunnally Hayes?
This is going to be my next
that's what
question,
I wanted to get
right?
into.
Sure.
So
Okay.
speaking of hitting and hitting coaches, right? The Nunnally situation this past season was a topic for, for a solid couple days. Jason Mackey kind of broke the news that Bryan Hayes was, going behind the organization's back and hitting with the Altoona hitting coach, John Nunnally. So once that happened, reports were like that the Pirates didn't really like that too much. Nunnally was let go at the end of the season. We also had some kind of conflicting reports on that too, because we then had Jared Pruger on from the Altoona Mirror, and he basically was like, it really wasn't that big of a deal. They exchanged some texts. They didn't really do a whole lot. So, like, I guess you obviously spoke to Bryan Hayes, with this article. So I guess, can you elaborate just what happened there?
Yeah, that was Kenny.
Kind of set things straight. Yeah,
that was Kenny who talked to those two guys. But yeah, they were both on the record as saying the same thing. It was so Bryan, to take it all the way back for those who haven't followed, was that Bryan had worked with Nunnally starting in 2020, alternate site. He came up and tore the cover off the ball, right? Scalded it, 1. OPS rookie of the month in September. I started tweeting Bryan Hayes as homered and did it like 10 times that month.
That's
and then
right. I forgot about
things have really slowed down, but it's still going. The bit is still alive. And so he didn't work with him for the next 2 years. And then last spring, he asked that Nunnally work with him in spring training. And so the Pirates had him come over from minor league side to the major league side, work with them. And about halfway through camp, it sounds like, from what we gathered, Nunnally went back. And Bryan had a great spring, did really, really well. But then he said toward the end of camp, it just like started to feel like something was off. But by that point, Nunnally was back on the minor league side and couldn't really come back and forth the whole time. So Bryan struggles the first half of the season. I'm seeing Eno Saris talking about like he was a little skeptical, I think, of the impact of Nunnally because some of like the fly ball rates and things like that were climbing in the first
I
half.
saw that earlier today too.
Yeah, so I haven't talked to I'll fight him. No, I think that could be a lot of reasons for that. I mean, all the Pirates coaches could have been saying that. We all also could have told Bryan to do that. But he did work Nunnally in spring training. If that, if you want to look at that as a potential factor. So he has a bad first half. He gets hurt, his back injury in July. He's sitting out, and he said, as he was sitting out, he just decided, like, I need to do something about not being a good hitter. I'm better than this. This is a guy who like would go home, work with his dad in the offseason and take 300 swings every day. And he just puts a ton of work into his hitting and has not shown up in the last couple of years. And so he decides to call John Nunnally and see if they could work together. So Nunnally has Mondays off in the minors. He's in Altoona. And so every week, according to what both of these guys said, every week that was like possible. I think it was in Pittsburgh, it was in Philly once, may have been one other road city. They got together, and then I guess the season ended in September, so it wasn't like the Monday thing was the problem. But they said they met weekly, and in that time, of course, Bryan Hayes takes off. He hits like a near MVP, and so. There's actually their first meeting was August 7th. We took this line out, but he is August 7th. And if you go look at the stats, that was an off day. And August 8th, he homered. August 9th, he homered. And then he had I think a 7-hit series against the Braves coming right off of it. So immediately pays dividends. Now, how much one session can actually do, I don't know, but does it work for a narrative? So we,
Yes.
it sure does. So they get to the end of the season. The Pirates decide to let Nunnally go. Nunnally thinks this because they found out about it. Now, how do they find out about it? My guess is from Jason's story. Jason Mackey's story, he wrote at the end of August that some headline was something like Bryan Hayes' breakout coming from with like a surprising help or something like that. You can find it.
Yeah.
And it mentioned we didn't go into all of this in the story, but it mentioned that they were working together, and I don't think it said they met. I think it was more they at least had conversations, and he was advising him. And then it broke into a quote from someone close to Bryan saying that they felt Nunnally should be the big league hitting coach, like 100% or something like that. And if I had to personally give opinion on what may have gotten the man fired, it may have been sentiments like that when they decided to retain Andy Haynes as major league hitting coach, and having someone close to your star infielder say things like that. Probably not something the Pirates are interested in. However, the Pirates
someone close. Wonder who that is.
We're not going to take
anybody.
Any guesses
not like anybody in the Hayes family.
So anyway, I can imagine that kind of heightening tensions there. But anyway, the Pirates, we asked Sherrington about it, and he declined to comment on any personnel decisions or whatever. Nunnally thinks it is exactly that reason that he gets fired. And so the question is, like, why did they need to do that? Right. And so we asked both of them, and they just felt like they were going, like, no one needed to know. They felt like, and no harm, no foul was one thing that Bryan said. And Nunnally, I think, probably understood the stakes of it a little bit better. I can talk to him, so I don't have the answer for that one exactly. I think I understood there were probably like some more staff politics going on, that you should probably just keep it quiet and help out the player you're being asked to help out. And so you can read this, and I think pretty clearly come to the conclusion that, like, not a surprise that this guy got fired because of like these internal politics. We don't know for sure that's why he got fired. But right. It's not hard. It's not hard to read that and be like, okay, I get why that didn't work out. But the greater question, the reason I kind of urge Ken, like we should like try to make this stress. This is like, there's something clearly messed up in your organization's process. If your star,
Yes.
potentially all-star, Gold Glove third baseman believes his best path forward is to secretly work out with a AA hitting coach, and they need to not let it get out because bad things can happen and feelings can be hurt, and whatever the route looks like, it doesn't look like a guy who believes that everyone has his best interest at heart and everyone has his development at heart. And so people could disagree with that, but you just look at that story and look at the anecdote, which we have backed up with on the record quotes, and that tells me that there's something happening in your organization that isn't perfectly aligned, right?
Yeah. And I'm actually surprised that Hayes is on record saying this stuff, to be honest. Like, I mean, the Hayes that we've kind of known the last few years, super quiet, kind of just keeps to himself, doesn't say a whole lot. And, he's kind of stepping up here and putting things out there that I don't think any of us would have expected to come out of his mouth.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, first off, if Ken Rosenthal calls you, maybe you answer, like the bow tie power.
The bow tie gets it done. Yeah.
But I don't know, because the alternative is we ask him to talk and he says no. And so we just have Nunnally, where his side of it's just not involved. And so I think from his explanation, it's not really I think you could like find yourself in a place where you think that's a plausible explanation, where you're just like, no one needed to know. I felt like I needed to take my career into my hands. And this was a point where I needed to get some help. I needed to go to someone I like knew had helped me in the past. And so the way he explained it was like, I'd worked with him in the past. He was in the organization. I didn't think it should be a problem. And I think that's a pretty actually reasonable way to do it. Now, doing it secretly might not be the way to do it. Maybe you should talk to, I don't know, the coaching staff, talk to the GM and say, hey, I need to find my way out of this. I think Nuns would be my best path. Can I work with them? And you think they could figure something out? So this may just be a communication problem, but clearly, like, that anecdote, it was kind of old news to people, but I think was a fuller telling of what happened. That to me raised some questions, because I don't think it's something you can just sweep under the rug and be like, that was a weird one-off event. It's your best. It's like it's your best player. It's your most valuable player.
It's one of your most important players. And the other interesting piece here is, like, he continued to work with them this offseason, and he plans to continue to work with them going forward.
Yeah, that's what Nunnally told.
He says there's multiple players too, right? Is there multiple he's working with?
I don't know if it's multiple Pirates players. Again, that part was Kenny as well, and he had confirmed that Nunnally had gotten an offer from the Nationals, and Nunnally turned that down. And so he's just going to work privately with guys. I don't know exactly what his plans are. You'd imagine the Pirates wouldn't stand in the way of it. They have other guys work at drive. Henry Davis is at Driveline this offseason. Palacios was over there too. Like, this happens. Mitch Keller's at Tread.
That's what I find interesting in this.
It's just like, it's the internal aspect of it.
Like, think about the pitchers, how many that are going to Tread. I mean, we had last time we had you on is about Mitch Keller.
Yeah.
And we talked about the relationship with Tread and how all three parties work together. So that's why I find this whole thing very, very interesting, because
let me ask you this,
kind of their MO.
As Gary points out, do you guys think it could be that it has nothing to do with Kid Bryan? Like, could it just be that his AA hitters were not performing? I mean, he didn't have a lot to work with, but
so we did discuss that. I mean, it is kind of, when you look at the performances, it's not like he was doing well for his guys in AA. There was a lot of struggles there too. I don't know. I think ultimately, my point of view, it just became a distraction. Like, it got to here because of the situation, and like, this was the only thing they really could do. Because if you're Andy Haynes at this point, like, that's got to be uncomfortable.
Sure.
And like I said, like Gary kind of points out there. Sorry, Tyler.
No, you're fine.
Like, people get outside hitting instruction all the time. This isn't anything new. It happens in every organization every year, and it's been happening for a very long time. I think where this one got weird, and could this have just been a pure lack of performance issue? Absolutely. We've seen a lot of players take that jump from Greensboro to Altoona and just stop hitting. Now, is that because Greensboro is a very high hitting environment and Altoona is not? Maybe, but it could have some sort of disconnect there in the development. That's definitely a plausible thing that happened here. But I think you mentioned earlier, like once you have people basically saying Andy Haynes isn't the right guy, it should be Nunnally. Like at that point, if you're an organization, you got to pick your dude. Like
I think
I don't
that's
think you
true.
can.
Yeah.
I don't think you can just let that simmer, and the
Yeah.
organization picked Andy Haynes.
It had also been coming not just from whoever said that close to Bryan. Like players that we talked to, we didn't get too much into it because we didn't need to spend like graphs talking about how much players like not only, but the bottom line is they did. We kept a quote or two in there, but there's another quote that like when you're working with him, you feel like you're the best hitter in the world. He just knew how to build your confidence. Everyone was asking to get over into his cage to work with nuns. I don't think that suggests that nobody likes to be in the cage of a guy who's great on analytics. Great. I think talking to guys, they're just like, there are sometimes you just want to be built up, and you go to Nunn's cage, you're going to do that. And he also was better than anybody they knew at working through reading pitchers, getting tips, getting a read on not only pitches and pitch breaks, but also tells. That's valuable stuff to have in an organization, right? And so they had been arguing over the years for him to get promoted is part of this. Players had been arguing for that. They thought he should get more opportunities at higher levels, and that hadn't really happened. He sort of stayed there at AA. And so it may have just been a culmination of this adding up and adding up and adding up. And then you get this anonymous quote that festers, and then you find out that he's sort of been working in secret, and that might be the last straw. Or maybe they just looked at the stats at AA and said, yeah, Jack Swinsky did well and Kip Bryan did well, but we're not seeing enough development. Who knows?
I guess my thing here would be, it seems like it's a complete organizational failure here, where you aren't at a point where a guy can go to a guy at a lower level and be able to get whatever they need to get from them. If you're the GM, let's just put Steven here on what's the P word I'm thinking of? We'll just put you up there right now and
pedestal.
Thank you. Big word.
Wow.
God, brain's not working.
P word.
But let's just say you're there and you want to get help from someone else. That's basically like the Athletic saying, no, you can't go get help from him. This entire organization is essentially telling you, you can't go lower than our major league staff. To me, that's an organizational failure.
Yeah. And whether or not that was accurate, whether actually they would have gotten mad at him, the bottom line is they treated it as if the player and the coach treated it as if they needed to go that way. And that's an issue.
Yeah, it's a very bad look at the very least.
Yeah.
Where a guy at the major league level cannot go to a guy at a lower level anymore, because there's a fear that they might get fired for it.
Yeah, I think just the fact that they didn't feel comfortable to be open about it, like that's an organizational problem. Like and that's just like across business, right? Like if you were in your place of work and it's like, you know what, I'm gonna go ask so and so for some help just because he seems to be really good at this one thing. That's not really something you kind of go around people's back on. It's like, hey, you know what? I could really use some help on here. Yeah. He's really good at it. I'm going to go talk to him. That's collaboration typically encouraged in a workplace environment.
The fact that Bryan Hayes felt like he had to hide it is a problem in itself.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly where they go from here. They're set up in a position where they could have a fine season. And I think if they do, like, we'll get dunked on. It wasn't really like the intent of us to say like they don't have a shot here. I don't believe they don't have a shot. I think this division is eminently winnable. The Cubs could go like add a couple of these free agents and maybe make it a different conversation. But the Pirates are in a position where, like I can talk myself into some of these free agents working out pretty nicely. They have a pretty good bullpen. Now the rotation is a mess, but Marco Gonzalez has had some good years. What if you get 2022 Martin Perez? The first half or whatever. Like that's a guy. So it's interesting because we mentioned all the drafting problems they've had, the development problems they've had. They're still in position to be all right. It's just that I don't foresee a future where ownership says we're going to push the go button now in advance of when we think we're going to be good. We've seen like the Tigers. Maybe they jumped a little too early, but the teams like that, they start spending a year or two. The Cubs started spending on Stroman and these other guys before they're going to win. And guess what that does? That speeds up a rebuild so that it's not 5 years. It's 2 years or like 2.5 years. I don't know, something short, and does not make your fan base miserable. They'll still be pissed, but it's not something that puts your it's horrible what the Pirates have put the fan base through. You saw the excitement of 2013, 14, 15. You saw that, you experienced it, you lived through it. You like had a full ballpark every homestand. I was there for that. 98 wins. And then you start dismantling that because you realize you've for whatever reason you've capped off on the payroll. So Neil needs to go, Neil Walker, and then Liriano needs to go. And then Kutch maybe he needs to go. Oh, we'll hold on to him again. Pedro's gone though. We can't afford him at that production. And then Garrett's got to go. I'm not thumbs upping that on purpose, but Garrett's got to go 2 years before free agency, and we're going to sell low on him. And then Kutch is gone, and so many decisions happening after that fact that, like, it cannot be overstated, man. That they went from 99 million in 2016, declined every single year down to 45 million in 2021. Every single year they declined. There was no second wave. There was no extension being handed out in that next core of players, right? Bell, Tyone, Frazier, Williams, Cool. Yeah,
Musgrove,
Musgrove. Any of those guys that like were theoretically options, they didn't happen. They were like headed in a different direction. And you have this massive gap now of disappointment leading to rebuild. And now what have you done to fans? You haven't won anything since 2015, which makes it 9 years or whatever, 9 seasons. That's brutal. That's brutal what you're doing in a fan base. I'm not a Pirates fan. I'm not emotional about this. I'm a Tigers fan at heart. They've done horrible things to me in my childhood. I wrote about that last year with their 119 loss season. But it's one thing to lose because your team is just horrible. It's another thing to be doing it in a way that your fan base is just pleading you to spend more money. And for the love of God, even if you're not going to spend as much as everybody else, don't give your front office less to pay players with because you need them to pay for 2 buildings.
So I want to bring this up. And again, speaking of Pirate fans, probably know the answer to this, right? But something I kind of forgot about when he brought up the Charrington quotes when he came on, Travis Williams quotes, about like doing things differently. That it kind of resonated and went back in my memory bank here. And, like when Neil Huntington was fired, right? It seemed like Bob Nutting was pretty pissed. It almost felt like this was a new Bob Nutting in a sense, right? And obviously, like we've been saying, and I think many people like, show me it. Words don't mean anything. Show me it, right? But it almost felt like maybe something happened up here. And, it's like, okay, I gotta do better. And he talked about it. And like this new regime, he's talked about it that, when the time comes, we will spend. When the time comes, we'll do this. We're going to do things differently. I'm sick of seeing players go. Like, I want them to stay here, that type of stuff. So, in all of this, did you pick up on any of that? Like, has it felt like maybe with this new regime, things are a little bit different than before?
Yeah, I think they're certainly trying different things. If you accept that people are coming to this front office understanding what the job is, what the constraints are, then you can look at what they're doing and look at what Huntington's regime did and say, yeah, they're trying things differently. I mean, something as small as like the culture things that you could read that as a good move. You could read that as a bad move, up to you. But they are loosening some of these rules, hair, facial hair, jewelry, whatever. We had someone talk about walking out and seeing players do like a guns out BP in the minors, whatever. Like they're just having some more fun. And then you can hear other people say there were issues with the team being upset that low A guys were not working out in the same as rigorously as they wanted. And this person's perspective was, well, you stopped giving them an assigned schedule to follow, and you're expecting these children to be rigorous in their workouts. If you just paid them a lot of money, they're not going to do it. And so one quote they're using there was someone saying like, basically like, it wasn't very enjoyable to go through the nutting regime, but it made us pros. And there's an argument there. There's also an argument they went way overboard in like very publicized way and in ways that just kind of went under the rug. It just didn't. Probably that stuff didn't ultimately impact whether you were a good major leaguer, but at least the Pirates are trying something different. The messaging, one player said, was like, the messaging we got when I would sort of push back, I'm like, is no facial hair in like 2-day scruff really gonna like make me a better baseball player? Was, listen, we've tried a lot of things over the years as a Pirates organization. We need to do things differently, and this is what we're trying to do: is like be strict and like sort of, I hate to use militaristic because of the Hoka stuff, but like sort of militaristic, right? Of like, this is what we're going to try. We're going to have standards. It's going to be very clear what the expectations are. And they've changed that. And a lot of that is just personality, right? Shelton has a different personality at major league level. Charrington, I think, has a different personality. It's more laid back. I don't personally think that's like a problem. Is there an issue with how that's being taught to players? Is there an issue with players holding each other accountable? The bigger issue, probably not having veterans in the clubhouse for a handful of years, or maybe having the guy who you just signed for like, $2 million who you're hoping is going to lead your team. Like, he just got here and you also gave him $2 million for 1 year. He's gone in a couple months if he plays well. So I don't think you can count on that guy to like lead your team. Like, you didn't pay him enough to do that. So you should probably just like have more guys around. So there's that. The actual ways they're going through the development process. They have much better tech today. We saw that almost immediately. I mean, really immediately. Yeah. Starting 2020, there was tech galore. There were people I'm thinking of Aaron Razum, who was like suddenly really, really visible out there every day working with pitchers. I think that's all good stuff. I didn't have anybody who we talked to who thought that was bad to have those people involved, and that tech, all that's good stuff. It felt like it's more the phrase that Charrington brought up a ton early on, you probably remember it, is like, we're gonna have a player-centered culture. And I think they're making attempts to do that. And it's just a matter of like, is that gonna work out? Is that gonna work out? And then is it truly player-centered to the point where you're telling a guy, just do what you do best? Or are you like tailoring things to make him the best possible player he can be? Are you letting him work out with the guys he needs to work out? Are you giving him all the support that he needs from a coaching and instruction basis, all the tech he needs? So a lot of that we don't see, a lot of that we don't know. And so if you like look at our story, I think you can assign blame however you want, at front office and ownership, whatever. But I think I may have written this to Jim today. We were talking that the ownership stuff is really, it's facts. Like, I don't think anyone we didn't put people in there who just taking pot shots at Bob, right? It was pretty much facts. Like, here's where they are in free agency, here's where they are on payroll, and here's an anecdote that has facts in it that Bob did not dispute about the $8 million that went to buildings. And the part about player development is much more just perspectives we gathered. And I think a front office person with the Pirates today could absolutely read that and be like, disagree. We think we're doing great. And you might be. We'll find out in 4 or 5 years and see if you guys are still around. You could be. That's us looking for ways to explain some of why the Pirates have not gotten to the promised land, like the Rays have and other teams have. But it could happen. It certainly could. It's just that's more the perspectives of people who we think are smart and had a really good view of the organization.
Just over your reporting here, what do you think the main difference is between the Pirates and the Rays? Because I know everybody wants to be the Rays, and truthfully, I would probably like lose my mind if I was a Rays fan, because I don't like the way they wheel and deal everybody. But culturally, there is a difference there, and coaching wise, there's a difference. Development wise, there's a difference. They have an idea of what they're doing.
There's a lot, man. Part of it is like, you have the system built out so perfectly now that as long as you have smart people running it, like, you can keep this perpetual motion going. Where the Pirates, I mean, when's the last time it felt like they were in that position, right? Maybe like the 2015-ish era. You at least looked at like AA, and you're like, I mean, these guys all talk about it, right? I remember I've talked over the years to to Glass on Williams and Cool and Tyone about like they would sit at Double A and be like, we're gonna do it. We're gonna be the next core. We're all gonna come up and win a World Series together. Whatever. They all believe that, and they had a great core and they had a good farm system, all that good stuff. And then things fell apart in a very rapid manner, and so the Rays have built this extremely stable situation. They have cutting edge people throughout the organization, as far as instructors and front office executives. But the other part of it is like guys will go to Tampa, like free agents will sign there because
Robert Stevenson just got an $11 million a year deal, and we traded for nothing.
Guys will go there because
That's why.
The weather's nice, but you go there knowing the Rays will make you better. So Travis Sawchuk just posted an excerpt from his book that was about Garrett Cole and how he went to Houston, had one conversation that like opened his mind, and he became Garrett Cole. And people will say it's the sticky stuff, but Garrett when they had that one conversation, that's what happens with the Rays. Tyler Glasnow goes there and they have a conversation. They say, throw your best pitch right down the middle, and we're going to make that work. And guess what? He turns into a pitcher. They flip for 2 really good players. That could be great for them for a long time. And so if you're the Pirates, you cannot afford to not do that. You need to be the place that people come, you have a conversation with them about why we've sought you, why we wanted to get you for 2 years. You know, Chris Archer, they wanted him for a long time. Chris Archer, we wanted you for a long time. Come in here. Here's how we turn things around. They didn't turn anything around with Chris Archer. Everything just continued in the trend it already was going. And so that's the biggest difference I see, Tyler, is like people go to the Rays because they know they're about to get better, and the Pirates right now do not have that reputation among players or in the across the business. Even if people like Cherington, people like Huntington, people like Bob as a person, it's just not the reputation they have today. Where they had a reputation 10 years ago, right? They were the framing, sinker, shifting, and
everything's going right.
and the reclamation place, right? They had that reputation, and then you lose it over 10 years because you sort of whiffed on whatever the next trend was in baseball. And now you need to reclaim it somehow. And I don't think today that they're at, the forefront of whatever today's revolution is.
Let's be honest. Like if Neil Huntington stuck around, like the forefront was what Neil Huntington was doing 10 years ago.
Right.
Throw a sinker.
Right. I mean,
sinker, get ground balls and put the ball in play.
While you're thinking of like where to assign blame, like that regime is absolutely not blameless, right? I wrote about this a lot. I went back and reread everything I wrote back then. I was writing 3 weeks before he got fired. Was writing about just the embarrassment of the Garrett Cole versus Tyler Glasnow Game 5 of the DS. Complete embarrassment. They had so many guys in that playoffs that they had just not unlocked anything with these guys, and that regime was to blame. And then you're to blame for the actual product or the actual value you got in return. And so that like you can't have this conversation and just blame Cherington. Now you can say that Cherington has failed to crack the code so far. I think to me that's fair. We'll see if that works in the next couple of years. But that whatever switches they needed to make to be at the forefront, by the end of Huntington's time, they were not at the forefront. Not close.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair.
Yeah. Well, before we kind of wrap this up, do we want to do our announcement while we have everybody here, Donardo? Yeah. Go ahead and do the announcement.
All right. So we've been kind of hyping this up a little bit, saying we have an announcement, but like nothing is like all the details weren't confirmed and official yet. So it is official. We'll play the video to make it. So here you go, guys. So there it is. So as you know, next week we'll be in Bradenton, right? We will have official pregame shows inside Lecon Park. That's Sunday, and 28th is Wednesday, right? Yeah, Wednesday. We'll be doing pregame shows in there. So if you're at the games, come see us. Where we'll be at exactly, I'm not sure. We'll have a table. You'll see us though. Just look for the dummies with a microphone,
or the dummy with a beer.
I can't wait to see this $8 million batting cage at Pirate City.
Yeah. So there's that. So yeah, cool stuff. I'm excited about it.
That should be fun.
Yeah, very excited.
I'm trying to keep up with the comments over here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Bucko Mike's posting in here. That's the one you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, or not. Deductions, Bucko Mike.
No, Bucko Mike's my guy. But yeah,
But anyway,
great article,
no, I
Steven.
love the article, and I think
Actually, Steven, I woke up this morning to a group text from my family, just screenshot after screenshot of that article trashing the Pirates. So
Yeah,
great wake up to me.
I'm sorry to have done that to all of you.
I woke up to it. I had a couple group chats too, and they were like, they screenshotted and they were like, Jim, you made an Athletic article. I was like, yeah.
You did it. Yeah.
and again,
You've been
I
mentioned
made it.
before.
I made it.
I swear I've mentioned you before. Neil Lucas was asking about top 5 spending and development. So that's something we asked about. So I asked Nutting about, and he said that they are still like among the top spenders. Something he's claimed. I mean, back in 2019, he was claiming it. There's no way to like prove that. Teams don't publish like what they're spending in development. People who said, like we talked to, said that's plausible. That's where the focus is. Like that's where talking about like return for dollar, like that's where you get it. It's in extensions and it's in acquisition at the amateur level. So that's good. You just need to like turn that into like it's extremely cheap to just say like we spend a ton in that area. It's like, well, then you need to do something with it. You need to show results. You can't just be like we spend a ton internationally and then not have anybody since Marte, right? Like that's your fault too. That's also your fault. And so if it's ownership just being like, ownership just being like, look, we're trying. That's like, well, then you have the wrong people in place. If that's truly like all the conversation takes, that you're doing everything you have to do, then you need to fix your process. But my offer would be do a little bit of both. Conversation on Twitter today is like, you could prove the Athletic wrong today by going to sign Blake Snell or somebody else.
Said that. Yeah.
Yeah. You can do all sorts of things to prove the Athletic wrong that you have not done a multi-year deal since Daniel Hudson and Sean Jasto.
Wrong.
You can prove the Athletic wrong by giving out a guarantee larger than 17 million. You can, when I ask you if you would authorize Bob Nutting a free agent deal in the range of 15 to 20 million, you could, instead of responding that the Key Brian Hayes and Brian Reynolds extensions, which were not in that range, neither of them, they are examples of you're committed, you're like you will welcome long-term commitments. That is not, I think, the right answer. The right answer would be if the right deal comes along, we will sign it. There are ways, I think, to turn this around and say we can spend in development, we can be among the top 5 or whatever, and we can also have a 25th, 23rd ranked payroll because we can do a little bit of both. And not everybody's going to be signed. Like a third of this roster is 1-year deals right now. That might get him across the line. Who knows this year? But what's going to happen for next year? Like, are you gearing up to give somebody 30 million? No. But that's not even what people are asking. It's like, will you give someone 30 million total? It's not in 1 year. It's just like,
can we just get that 1 year $15 million?
Like if I were to give you a list on
right.
I made this, I'm just going to make you guys run long here. So I made a list yesterday of like every team's record, every team's record high free agent deal. And the Pirates, of course, were at the top. Pirates are at the bottom with the Russell Martin. But a lot of these you would look at and you'd be like, that's a terrible deal. Prince Fielder, Jason Hayward, Johnny Cueto with the Giants, George Springer, like all these, a lot of them don't work out, but it's like, those are all 100 plus. We're not asking the Pirates to do like 100+ million guarantees. It's like the Nick Castellanos 4 for 64, Edwin Encarnacion 3 for 60. That's a record for the Guardians. That's not a lot of money. Zach Eflin 3 for 40. Guess who looked good in a Bucko uniform right now? Zach Eflin pitching next to Mitch Keller and Edward Cabrera.
Another guy the Rays just taught how to be awesome too, though.
Yeah, true. But the Rays, I don't know what their previous record signing was, but like they had the cojones to say this guy was like pretty good, but like 6th starter in Philly, and we can figure it out to where he's going to be worth a 13.3 AAV to us, which is like the Pirates record. I think that's pretty much
Didn't
what
they sign Charlie
what it
Morton
is.
for like a 2-year, $40 million deal?
May have been a re-signing.
Guys, according to Steven's reporting today, this team waited a day or so to trade someone to save $30,000.
Not a good
Oh,
look.
yeah.
Yeah, that
we,
one was
we
like,
just glossed over that whole part, which should have been just the entire premise of this show. They waited to trade someone to save $30,000, which I completely believe because we've seen them wait and wait and wait and wait to do anything. And it always seemed like it was to save a buck.
There's a completely unconfirmed, so I'm going to leave out the specifics. But I heard a handful of years ago that there was like major bruit, as we say in French, a lot of noise in the front office one day in like the business side because they had failed to put someone, I think, on the injured list. I think it may have been disabled list at that point in time. On like one day earlier, and they lost a bunch of money because of like
Service
insurance,
time or-
like an insurance thing.
And the thing is, like, I completely
And it really
believe
mattered.
that. I really do believe that part of the article because there have been way too many times over the years that we've done the show where we will talk about why is this guy not on the IL? Why is this guy not DFA'd yet? Why did we not do this? It all adds up.
And you're not talking about like staying under the luxury tax. It's
No.
like
No, we're talking about making
It's
a
like
minimum
this-
wage salary.
save a little bit of coin. So anyway, my point was like if you look at
yeah.
this list I have here of like you look at all the like the top signings, like there's so many bad ones. Like you can easily look at that and be like, wow, free agent is like not a good way to spend your money. But you're not asking for that. It's like there are a lot of good signings in like the 50 million and under range. That it would still be record for the Pirates. Go ahead.
I don't know what I was talking about now.
Noah, before we're gonna keep hitting this.
Yeah, Noah.
No one wants to when he wants something. Give us an optimistic end to the Pirates. I need to end my day with a positive note.
Cuban buys them.
I mean, there's still plenty to be optimistic about. Like there are all these pitchers. Some of them got to work out right. I mean, some of them will be like Nick Kingham, who we all thought of as like a really good pitcher who had a chance to be in the majors, and then they get there and they just don't have major league stuff. So that might happen to some of them, but I mean, they have, I mean, the upside on Skeens is so high that you could be
They
like,
will ruin.
you could be having a blast watching that guy every fifth day. That's awesome. Now they need to fill out the lineup, and maybe you go find a couple of bats in free agency next year or something. It's like a lot of the question is like, when do you actually plan to start winning? Because I don't think these signings they made this offseason say they're like something has changed this offseason, right? Something has changed where they're like going to get 7 guys instead of going to get 2 guys who they want to flip. And maybe that honestly, maybe it's that because they just need to flip. They need to fill out the rotation. Like that could be as simple as that.
Yeah.
And they haven't had a first baseman in the past decade except Josh Bell. But it seems like something is changing. Like it feels like there's pressure mounting. There's some level of urgency happening because if Charrington doesn't show a step forward, like that happened, we put in the story, like Huntington almost got fired after collapsing in year 5. Like Bob's not going to have unlimited patience. Even if he like authorized this rebuild teardown. So you think, sorry, this is supposed to be positive. I think they're incentivized. No, I think it was. I think they're incentivized to start winning soon. I don't know what that's going to look like, but they have minor leaguers in place who I think if they transition to the majors better than Pirates historically have transitioned guys to the majors in recent years, could be exciting. Paul Skeens is awesome. Should be fun. Now, you could
Steven,
argue
you wrote about how many guys lost velocity through this organization. And we're talking about the one guy that maybe had like 8 innings last year. And we're just praying he doesn't stay in that.
For what it's worth, he threw today and he was at like 100, 101 all day.
Well, then get him the hell out of there.
No, I'm so sorry. I tried Noah, and that's just the vibes are not.
I'll agree with you. I'll agree with you.
Bad vibes, Tyler.
There are exciting pitchers in this system between Paul Skeens, Bubba Chandler.
I'm 30 damn years old, and I've seen 4 winning seasons. I'm allowed to have bad vibes about this team.
Absolutely, it's fully warranted.
I'm excited. I'm legit excited to see Henry Davis every day this year. I think we're gonna go. It's like a
Maybe.
big step toward figuring out what he is.
Yeah. I think he's like
And
the main storyline for this team this year. Like if he's good, then
yeah,
I think the team has a potential to be good.
and then also like is O'Neal Cruz the guy that we think he is, or is he a
Right.
guy who's gonna have a 30% strikeout rate? Like he and Sawinski are Sawinski, who's gonna have like a 4-WAR season. Was that 4-WAR? Was I think that was
To
two.
Jim's credit, he only said 3.
3, okay. No, I mean these guys both could hit 30 plus homers, and it's just a question of like how much on base will they get. So if you look at this roster, I'm at roster resource right now, it's like the next good Pirates team. Like I could see Cruz, Reynolds, Hayes, Sawinski being part of it. Everyone else kind of like 1-year dealy kind of. Paguero, I'm not sure exactly what they're going to get from him, but there are some pieces. I don't know. I made this comment earlier on a different show. I'm sorry, guys. I went on a different show. Was that like if you want to draw if you want to draw like the inviting parallel between Cole and Skeens when they were coming up, like Cole was coming up to a team that had, I think, a much more established core where you had Kutch, Marte, Walker, Alvarez.
And you even had like Martin on that team.
And then you had free agency.
Burnett.
Actually, free agency brought in, but already like kind of turned around. Liriano, Burnett, Martin, and then the bullpen, Grilly, Watson, whatever.
Jones.
Yeah. So that was, I feel like, a much more established team ready to win. Whereas the team you come up with now, I'm naming 2 regulars I feel good about: Hayes and Reynolds. Cruz as like a total wild card. Sawinski as like a guy I think really could have a significant amount of upside. And then like you have to really squint at that rotation to feel good about any of it, right? But
Perez and
Gonzalez, like Mitch needs to be who he became in the last year and a half, and Perez and Gonzalez need to be like valuable pitchers. And so I don't think I can't look at that team and be like, oh yeah, I could see them. I just can't see this team winning a division, which is what they say they plan to do this year, with the contend for the division. So it's tough. It's tough because they just need so much more depth. They need to fill out the roster with guys better than who's at the back end of that roster.
I just can't look at that rotation and think this team's going to make a playoff run. I can't. They have one starting pitcher and a bunch of question marks. And I know we talked about 2013 and like there were question marks. If you go back and look into like 2012 to 2013, there were definitely question marks, but you had AJ. Liriano, definitely a question mark. Locke, definitely a question mark. Morton, a question mark. Can't remember who the other guy was. But they all worked out. That doesn't happen.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like who's the AJ Burnett out there today. Like maybe it's like Michael Wacha, and maybe those guys just get paid too much for the Pirates to bring them in, to turn him around. I mean, he's not been bad. But like those reclamation projects don't really happen in the same way anymore. So I don't know. Gonzalez could be. I feel better about Gonzalez than I actually do about Perez, but it's more of an innings question with him because of the injury. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm just gonna keep this rolling. Chapman. Why go get Chapman? Because if this is a flip him move, I mean, beyond the questions about off field stuff and McCutcheon headhunting stuff, if this is a flip him move, that's way too much money to pay him. The Royals just did that at $3 million last year and succeeded and got a really good young pitcher. But I don't think you pay him $10.5 million thinking that you're going to pay 7 of that and then get a decent prospect. That's a lot for the Pirates. Like to me, that signing said like the Pirates think they're going to start winning. Did you agree, or do you think this is?
I think the Pirates have the full. I think it is their full intention to win this year. I think a lot of things have to go right for it to happen, and I kind of believe Sherrington. His quote on it last week was, they made a play for some starting pitchers. They just didn't land any of them. They decided to go elsewhere, and it wasn't necessarily that the Pirates couldn't offer what the other teams were offering. It's just they decided to go elsewhere. And I think it just had to do with they didn't land any of those starting pitchers that they wanted. And so they were like, okay, let's pivot and let's get like a lockdown bullpen arm to just shorten that game because the rotation's now going to be an obvious weakness. And I think their plan really is just like, let's get to the 6th. Because if they can get to the 6th, then you're talking about Holderman, Chapman, Bednar, 7, 8, 9. and you've got a pretty good middle relief core too with like Moretta and Barucki. So I think if this team can get
Kaczynski.
through 5, like I think if they
You
can
have to
get
say
through 5,
Baraki.
yeah,
Yes, he did,
Yeah.
Tyler.
I did.
Shush.
Just
King
say
Baruch.
Majinski. Say
Majinski.
Majinski.
Majinski, Moretta,
Thank you.
Barucki, whatever you want to say.
No,
they
no,
all have.
leave
I think
Barucki
they're
out of
all
it.
pretty good. No, I'm leaving Barucki in. The dude's awesome.
Nope.
But I think if they can
Those
get
his
to
cat.
5, yeah, Dobby. Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
nice little story today. We needed a little pick me up on Pirates Twitter. That was a good one. But
Steven.
if
Sorry.
the Pirates can get through 5 innings, they'll have at least a chance to win some games. And I think that's kind of where they pivoted.
Yeah. The comment over here, Charrington signed Chapman because sorry, it's on the wrong screen. Because Bob Nutting had told Jason Mackey that he wants the front office to spend money, basically put his GM on the spot and responded. All that's interesting because like we don't have a lot about the sort of interplay between Nutting and Charrington. I don't get the sense that Charrington feels very like there's a sense of urgency, like that he has 1 year to win. But just common sense would tell you that, like, I mean, track record A with Huntington in the 5th year, kind of almost getting fired, tells you that, like, at some point you need to show W's. And so regardless of like how much money you're being given, it's like at some point you need to win. And to me, like these signings do smack of like a guy who knows he needs to start winning. Whether or not these are the guys he'd like to sign, I think there's a reason he's not signing them long term. Is well, beyond they haven't signed anybody long term. These are guys who might be able to help you this year, and will at least bring up the replacement value of the roster. So they're
Right.
stronger than they were, but still, I think a ton needs to go right for them to be, you know, in the conversation in this division. Because listen, no one's like falling back. Even the Brewers, who have a great farm system, I think they're number 2. Am I wrong there? Keith Law's rankings. Then even they like they traded off their best player and they still I think are going to be okay. So I don't know. It'd be easier to look at the Pirates and feel a lot better about them if the division were in a place where the Reds still stunk, or the Cubs were falling back, or the Cardinals were like they were last year. But everybody else is trying, and so you need to like really do something, and that do something for the Pirates does not mean spend money in like a comparative way.
Steve,
Right.
you just want to be a co-host on this show? Like,
No, it's after my bedtime. You guys do too late.
I feel like you're just saying everything.
We have a
we've already said.
Starbucks. Do that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
morning.
There
show.
we go.
I don't know. A lot of this, I don't know how much the fan base actually agrees. With like I'm watching from afar now. Like I don't know. I can tell you how good Leo Peguero is.
It's funny.
But
It's not been that long since he's been there. I mean, it's still a civil war.
yeah,
You have a lot of fan base that like you should be the most optimistic about this team. They shouldn't make signings because you have all these pitchers in the system. And then you have others that just think, you know, like they should do more. Like then that's where we're at. Like everything you talk about with this team, I think is fair. You know, we've said this too. Like there's reason to be excited about individuals. Like I want to see Henry Davis. I think he'll be fine, right? But there's just a lot of what ifs. There's just too many what ifs going into a season that you should be competing. So if you
Yeah.
have a lot of what ifs, it sounds like you should probably surround yourself with some talent to, you know, bump up that floor. And it's like what they did is they added a bunch more of what ifs. So it's just a whole team of who knows what the hell is going to happen. Let's just find out.
yeah. But man, you just want to get to a point where you see butts and seats again. Like
Yeah.
PNC Park,
Which winning will do.
right? PNC Park is awesome, but PNC Park, like mostly empty, sucks. Like any ballpark does. Also go and have a great time, and take the kids and whatever. But like you just like you want to look at ownership and be like, why can't like how can you be doing anything except trying as hard as you can to make that happen again? And I'm not sure what the path forward is, because if everything goes right, yes, you can see this team doing what it did last year, which is like, okay, midsummer, you're like, wait, could they, might they? But the whole time, I mean, we all knew that was like fool's gold, right? Like they went 20 and 8 in April.
Even Ben Cherington, when they asked him, he was like, "Well,
yeah, that doesn't just happen." And so you'd be happy, but like, what if this team falls back and like basically plays like the team this year that it was from May 1st on. You like, sorry, Ryan. And you fall back and you're more of a 70-win team. Does that get Charrington in trouble? Like how much improvement is Bob expecting? Because he said to Mackey and to us, like, I expect another step forward. And what he said, we believe to Mackey, he said we expect to be the minimum expectation is to be in contention throughout the season. And he said to us slightly different, but like we collectively believe we can be in contention throughout the season. But like, listen, what if they aren't? What if this actually goes as it looks like it's going to go, and an injury happens, or Kutch isn't that great? Jack and O'Neal strike out 33% of the time. Rowdy Tellez is just fine. Yasmani Grandal is bad, and the Mitch is the only decent pitcher. Like if that happens, then like, what are you actually going to hold Charrington and his team to that expectation or not? We'll see.
Right. Yes.
And then everyone can dunk on the Athletic when the team wins 90 games and are playing the playoffs, and Mitch is starting game 1 of the wild card.
Just remove my tweet from your article if that happens.
I had nothing to do with this.
Just sending a cease and desist.
I'll just delete the tweet. It'll just be an embedded deleted tweet.
Oh, thank God that edit button's only good for 60 minutes. Yeah. But no, I mean, floor is yours still. Anything else you want to add?
No, I like it. Frank says everyone else is trying could have been the alternate title of your piece. Yeah, I think that's like the broader context that people need to consider when you're looking at this is you need the division. You need to be better than the rest of your division. And the Reds are extremely exciting, and they're not quite at like as high as they're going to get, but they're really exciting. They're full of young talent and the position player talent. And they play in a ballpark where like guys will hit rockets everywhere. And so it's a matter of putting a rotation together. The Cardinals, I just don't believe in them ever being like rebuild terrible. I think they're going to do enough to stay away from that. The Cubs, dude, they're about to spend a bunch of money, I think. Whether that's Bellinger or whether that's two of these guys. The Cubs they didn't just pay their managers $10 million to like take the middle road. And the Brewers, I think, they're smart, they're effective, they're ahead of the curve on a lot of things. And they're spending a little bit of money. Whether or not you like think Rhys Hoskins should get $30 million over a couple years, they're doing it. So they have an upgrade at first base. So that's a team that's at least shown that's willing to go out and help here and there. Even if, for years we've said like Brewers go like get a bat. I guess they're trying to do that a little bit. So if you look at that around the division, that I think should make you maybe even more concerned than like the current state of the Pirates roster is everyone's trying. And I don't see the reinforcements coming across the board for the Pirates. They might come in the pitching realm, and that can help so much because that's been their problem for a long time. But like, do they really actually have that next, if O'Neal sticks at short, that's great. But like that next third baseman, first baseman, center fielder, whatever.
Yeah.
Brad asks if we were the Padres and still weren't winning, would we be happy?
No, nobody's happy.
I think I'd be happier about like the off season, right? Like it would be at least like, you know what? We're doing everything at least from a front office standpoint to win. Now, the games would be frustrating as hell. Like when the Padres had like 100 plus 100 run differential last year, and we're below 500. Like it was something stupid. Like,
every single one-run game.
Yeah, it was almost like the weirdest team ever assembled. So yeah, that would be frustrating as hell. But at least at this point of the year, I'd be like, you know what? We're trying. Like we're trying to be good. That's all I can ask.
Yeah.
So it'd be a different kind of frustration with the Padres.
Yeah. Like I want to answer that too. Like you're only happy when you win. Right.
Right.
So like, I'm not going to be happy, but there's a difference of trying to win and like not trying to win.
Tyler?
I'm only happy when I'm unhappy.
True.
So
this is the happiest I've seen Tyler.
So
no, I
thrive
on
loving his life right now.
No, I thrive on being unhappy. So I'd probably be in a great place as a Padres fan. Because like you're trying, but it's not there yet. In this perspective, I hate it. I hate it all. But I'd be really happy as a Padres fan because I'd be super unhappy.
You on like our post game shows, if we were Padres fans, you would be in your element.
Oh, I'd be living the dream.
Yeah. No, nobody's happy is the bottom line. We
That's the goal.
I do every spring. I do a hope-o-meter where I just say like, "Are you optimistic? Are you not about your team?" And like the Yankees are consistently in like the 40% optimistic, just because like, yes, they're usually picked to win their division, and yet nobody's happy because they're not spending enough money compared to what their expectations are. So like, no one is actually happy. The team that just won the World Series, they're happy. The Braves fans are happy. The Astros fans are happy.
Dodgers fans are probably pretty happy.
Dodgers fans feeling good right now.
Yeah. I mean,
but like,
no, I need them to be unhappy as well because that makes me happy too.
Listen, they'll be unhappy when they don't win a World Series, right? Anytime they don't now, it's just going to be like,
that's what I need.
Yeah,
I need everyone unhappy.
So, yeah, it's tough. I mean, again, I lived through a lot of years of Tigers fandom where some ridiculous names were populating that roster, but I loved them anyway, and you're so unhappy until you get to a point that's just like the most magical moment of your life, where the team, Megler Ordonez homers, or they make the World Series, or the Pirates have a wild card game. That's one of like the coolest moments you're ever going to see. And then you're happy and you can live off that for a little while. And then you build a building and it costs you $8 million. And then you're still happy. And then you realize a decade later what it took to pay for that building. And you're extremely upset for a lot of reasons. And Nesbitt and Rosenthal make you mad for a day. So it's just like
jump on a podcast with a bunch of unhappy people.
That's right. So like you're happy in the great moments, and when it's not, you're just looking for someone to blame, and you're looking for easy answers. And the Pirates, I think Pirates fans rightly, there's a lot to complain about because it's been a long time since you had those magical moments, and you can look back along the way and be like, did it really have to all go wrong? Did it really have to? Was it inevitable? Guys just didn't play well enough, or could there have been some decisions that kept the train on the tracks?
Well, here's to a very optimistic, positive, and fruitful 2024 season for the Pittsburgh Pirates.
That's right, guys. Cheers.
Cheers. Well, awesome stuff. Honestly, I really appreciate you hopping on here, talking this through with us about that article. And obviously, as you saw, like, yeah, it was the talk of the day. You were that person today. So we thank you for that.
I was that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I'll take I'm going to go back to uniform stuff. So you won't see me for a little while. We'll see how upset people the Pirates get. But so far,
all I need is next time he writes about Pirates Twitter to maybe not include Donardo and Jim and maybe include Tyler. That'd be great.
I can give him my word that I won't include Jim. Wow.
Okay.
I just bailed
Fair
on
enough.
Wait, Jim just left. And it's not as if like you
all I
yourself.
needed. That was perfect timing, but that was as great as timing as we could get.
Apparently Jim wants to go to bed too.
He's old.
Yeah. Well, for real, honestly, again, thanks for coming on. We'll have you back on again, hopefully for better reasons.
That's right. That's right, guys. We'll do it
for sure.
All right,
Everyone
guys.
else
Thanks for having
watching, yeah, thanks for joining. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Peace out, Scouts.
Hey, you all. Thank you for watching. I know we try to provide the most entertaining content that we can, and we'd love to spread it to as many people as possible. So I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but if you could take the 5 seconds to like this video and subscribe to the page, it helps out so much more than you know. Thank you, and let's go Bucks.